Willkommen till Denmark. Today we are in the Danish city Blavands, and here lies the longest course of the UCI World Gravel Series. The course is 160 kilometers long, and even though there are 0 meters of elevation, the course lies in the middle of the training grounds of the Danish Special Forces. So it's definitely not going to be a walk in the park. Now I have no clue about the level of competition in Denmark, so there's only one way to find out. So let's move over to the race. I started almost at the front. What the hell happened? I went from starting somewhere in the back to starting within the top 10, and I had no idea what I had to do in the front. Welcome back everybody to another one of my race recap videos. For those who are new to this channel, I compete at the amateur level, and in these races we are going to look back at the key moments of each race, analyze the decisions I made, and learn from all the mistakes that I will make. As I'm still learning, your insights in the comments are super valuable. So please stick around, share your expertise, and let us learn from your experience. So let's get started. I arrived 1 hour before the start of the race, and I was one of the first ones at the starting line. The only others who came so early were also Dutch or had participated in 3 rides Aachen, where the first riders arrived about 2 hours before the start of the race. Maybe the Danish just enjoy their sleep more, or it's because there were only 102 participants in my age group 18 to 34. It really differs from race to race as to how early you need to arrive to catch a good starting position. Anyway, riding in the front of the pack was not really my specialty, as you are about to witness. I'm used to starting at the back and slowly moving up a few positions, which means that you are better than most of the riders around you. Starting at the front is a whole different game. I was now one of the least experienced riders in the group, which makes you even more nervous, and I just wasn't able to catch a break for 1 second. Everyone else was also riding super nervous at the start, which didn't make things better. All the other riders were trying hard to move to the front. I wasn't feeling confident enough to join them, so I let myself fall back a few positions, waiting until I felt better and hoping that the others would burn too many matches trying to get and stay at the front. The course was completely flat and the first 18 kilometers were on pretty straight roads, making it really hard for anyone to create a breakaway. So I was hoping that I was just able to maintain a position in the front of the group. If you have any suggestions on improvements here, please let me know in the comments below. So let's talk shortly about the course. This is the longest UCI gravel race of 2024, containing 162 kilometers, and even though the course is completely flat, most of its terrain is on the training grounds of the Danish Special Forces, making the terrain pretty tough. We had to ride 4 rounds of about 40 kilometers each, and each round consisted of 3 sections. The first section being the first 18 kilometers, which mainly consists of straight hardpack gravel and asphalt roads. The second section was a slightly technical ride through a beautiful forest, and the last section was the most brutal part of any race I've seen so far, the mud section. It was pure madness, and I still get PTSD just thinking about it. We'll dive deeper into the mud section later in this video. Under normal circumstances, the course would be pretty fast, but today was different. It had rained so much over the last few days, and especially the day before the race, it was pouring. During the course recon, I got completely soaked, and even after I was done, the rain continued to fall heavily. Unfortunately, I only brought slick and semi-slick tires with me to the race, as the weather forecast hadn't been this bad. But I think a more knobby tire would have been the better choice here. So always remember to bring a different set of tires to each race. Now let's talk about the race again. Here you get a clear view of how many positions I had lost in the first few kilometers of the race and how close we were all riding to each other. I didn't want to go full gas through this corner, so I had to make quite an effort to stay in this group. And after the next corner, we were going into the military terrain, and everyone wanted a good position before entering. So we went from a really wide road into a pretty small one, which was asking for trouble. And sure enough, someone went down in the corner and we had to get off our bikes. Not sure what happened there, but luckily it didn't look too bad and almost everyone could go on with the race pretty easily. So this section is a 6 kilometer straight gravel road, which, on paper, shouldn't be too much to worry about. However, all the rain had made this road quite tough. Nobody had seen how bad the situation really was, as it had poured the night before the race. As we approached the first large puddle of many to come, many riders hit their brakes, and it got very nervous very quickly. And just look at how deep this puddle actually is. The water was flying around and we went from 44 kilometers an hour down to just 25. Then we encountered another puddle and the same scene played out again. Luckily, I was handling these sections pretty well, as I found out that the key is just to go full gas through these water holes and trust that you'll get through. It's all about maintaining your momentum and not hesitating. The moment you start hesitating, the more energy you will have to spend to make it through these sections and stay within the front group. Now the group was slowly starting to fall apart. Not everyone was able to keep up the fast pace of the riders in the front with all the extra energy it took to get through these puddles, and I was able to move up a few positions. Finally feeling more confident and getting more into the race. Here I was just lucky to be in a faster line. My heart rate was already pretty high, so I'm not sure whether I would have switched my line here if I was on the other side. A few hundred meters later, everyone seemed pretty content with their positions. Not many riders were overtaking each other and there wasn't much room to do so. Then, a guy tried to squeeze in from the right, which was tricky because there wasn't much space, so I let him pass because I didn't want to push him off the road, and then he goes down and takes me and two others, unfortunately, with him.
Need a medic.
I fell really hard on my back. Later, I also saw that my hydration pack, which had softened the landing a bit, was completely destroyed. I was lucky, however, that only the outside of the bag was damaged, not the bladder itself. It was also super scary because we were riding around 36 kilometers an hour and the whole group was almost running over me. When I was lying on the ground, I really had to push back my bike and use it as a shield to protect myself. I was really lucky that everyone managed to brake in time. When I was standing and thinking straight again, I saw that my bottle was missing. Luckily, I found it rather quickly. Then I asked whether the other riders were okay, and then I went back on my bike to continue the race. Finally, back on the bike, I was just super frustrated. After all the preparation, travel time, and expenses, I ended up falling hard in the first 15 minutes of the race, and there was really nothing I could do about it. It was also my first time riding at the front, and I was super curious to see how long I could have managed to stay there. But that's just the tough reality of cycling, I guess. There wasn't much time to moan about it, though, because the race was far from over. I spotted two riders who had been dropped from the front group coming closer, so I waited a bit and then grabbed their wheel. After a few moments, I flipped the switch back to positive. My legs still felt okay and I was ready to start the chase after the riders in the front. After 6 minutes of chasing, we finally made it back into the next group. This was the second group of my age cat and contained about 20 riders that weren't able to stay at the front. Here I was able to get some nutrition in, rest a bit and get the heart rate down. Now we are entering the next section, the beautiful forest. Of course also with the nice puddles in the roads. Here I was riding with a different level of riders and I immediately felt much more confidence. I slowly worked my way to the front of this group and when I was riding at the top 5 riders, the guys in the front of me went in the wrong direction and I find myself riding at the front of the group. Now I found myself in a no man's land because I had no idea of how far the riders in front of me were and the riders behind of me were going too slow to ride together with me. Luckily, not long thereafter, a breakaway group from the age group 35 to 40 came flying by. and these guys were just sending it. After each corner I had to push really hard to stay in their wheel. Not sure if a breakaway group of very strong riders was the best group to join, but I didn't have many different options at the moment. Here you see again what the difference in level is when we are going through this corner. Look how much faster these guys are getting through these corners, and it is just insane how hard I need to work to get back into their wheels. For the past few kilometers I was able to stay with these riders, but it had cost me quite some energy. Unfortunately for the breakaway, they were caught by their peloton, and I was now riding with the front group of the age cat 35 to 40. This was all fun and games until we hit the mud section. After the mug off sign, the hardest part of the course would start. This was more of a field track section than a gravel section. The grass was soaking wet and the puddles in this road were just insanely deep. I saw that most riders had semi-slick tires, so I think nobody anticipated that the section would be this bad. You can see the guys in front of me almost slipping away, and here a guy just flies off his bike, which was also one of the three guys in the breakaway. So these are definitely no beginners. It was just madness. So listen to the sound that my disc brakes are making because of all the sand that is rubbing against it. I really had to push really hard to stay with this group, and we were only going 20 kilometers an hour. Then another rider had fallen off his bike, which I saw too late, and now I lost a bit of my momentum. I was just managing to stay on the bike, but it was super hard, and after a few more mud puddles I got stuck. So I had to get off the bike and lost the group. It was just total carnage. Here we finally made it to the mug off sign again, which meant that we survived the hardest part for the first time. We had to do this section 3 more times. Finally out of the woods, I found myself riding in a small group, and we were chasing a larger group of riders that was riding in front of us. The group in the front slowed down when we were going through the start-finish line, and many riders got new bottles. When we caught up, I recognized many of these riders. They had been with me in the front group of my age category before I crashed. They couldn't keep up with the front group either and had been dropped. I had no idea how many riders from my age group were still ahead, and my back started hurting insanely bad. I thought, how am I going to survive 3 more laps of this carnage? I struggled with a back injury last year, so this was a bad sign. I feared the crash had triggered something, and it was only getting worse. On a completely flat course like this, drafting was crucial, and those who stayed in the front group longer had a huge advantage. To make matters worse, both my cameras had died because the power bank cables detached during the crash. The cables were completely covered in mud, and I didn't want to risk putting them back in. Despite maintaining a decent position in the second lap and possibly even gaining a few spots, the pain in my back forced me to make a tough decision. At the end of lap 2, I decided it was best to quit the race. Even though it was a sad moment, it didn't feel like it. I knew I had made the right choice, and I gained a lot of experience from this race to carry into future races. This was my third failed attempt at qualification this year, but I still had two more chances, one in the south of Germany and one in the Swiss Alps. Now let's move over to the data overview.
Right, so unfortunately I did not finish Bravo Gravel Challenge at kilometer 9. The guy right in front of me crashed, and from that point he hit him, and from that point on my back started hurting, and it was really hard to get in the match again. But I'm very happy with the footage I was able to capture. I think I was still able to get a nice video together. So at least we have that. But you're here for the data overview, so let's check the results. I rode 2.5 hours. In those 2.5 hours, I did 2 rounds. So I had to do at least 2.5 more hours until the finish, and that was just not possible anymore. I did with an average speed of 31 kilometers an hour, and that's including the crash, and a normalized power of 270. Now if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next episode. Cheers!